being Act 71 of 1962 and the Foodstuff, Cosmetics and Disinfectant Act of 54 of 1972 to prohibit the sale and manufacturing of cosmetics tested on animals in the Republic of South Africa and criminalize the testing of cosmetics on institutions is globally celebrated for being rights-based and for being rooted in the concepts of justice, dignity, and equality before the law. This must, by extension, be accorded to both humans and animals. The drive to prohibit testing on animals is underpinned by our responsibility to protect the most vulnerable. As President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela remarked that, I quote, "The measure of the soul of a nation is how it treats its most vulnerable," close quote. Honorable members, this is a cause he not only believed in, but championed in his capacity as the national patron of the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, SPCA, for 20 years. This comes as no surprise, as he probably developed life as a cattle header in the rural Transkei, where he spent the formative years of his life. Honorable members, he extended this commitment to the preservation of wildlife during his term as President of the Republic and was instrumental in the creation of the Transborder National Parks that facilitated the movement of wildlife across borders, especially between South Africa and Mozambique. I am pleased, honorable members, that we have brought this progressive piece of legislation before the committee so that we may contribute positively to upholding South Africa's position as a progressive advocate for animal rights. In doing so, we are taking concrete steps to advocate for the protection of animals and to prevent any cruelty and trauma to animals as a consequence of testing cosmetics, foodstuff, and disinfectants. Honorable members, it is estimated that more than 100 million animals are used in research and testing across the world each year, including around 4 million in the United Kingdom. Animals used in scientific procedures can and do experience pain, suffering, and distress, which can be severe. It is also estimated, honorable members, that the top 10 animal testing countries in the world are China sitting at 20.5 million, Japan at 15 million, the United States of America at 15.6 million, Canada at 3.6 million, Australia at 3.2 million, South Korea at 3.1 million, the United Kingdom at 2.6 million, Brazil at 2.2 million, Germany at 2 million, and France at 1.9 million. Internationally, honorable members, 42 countries have passed laws to limit or ban cosmetics animal
Recording
testing,
in progress.
including every country in the European Union, Australia, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Iceland, India, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, Korea, Switzerland, Taiwan, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and several states in Brazil, to name a few. We have a duty to protect the most vulnerable in our society, as we have a constitutional obligation to protect the environment, and that extends to flora and fauna. Honorable members, this responsibility can only be effected by a comprehensive legislative response to prohibit testing on animals as a means to prevent trauma, pain, and suffering of animals. We are therefore duty-bound to follow in the footsteps of the founding father of our nascent democracy, President Mandela, and uphold his good example as the national patron for the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. We therefore take this opportunity, honorable members, to welcome today's presentation and request yes, we can hear you and we can see the presentation.
For the invitation. I also thank you for the time that you have given us to present this very important bill. And I thank you for your opening comments, reminding us of the rich legacy of President Mandela in this regard. President Chair, my presentation will be quite brief, and it is largely the memorandum and touches on a number of the issues which you have already touched on. But I do want to thank you and the members of the Portfolio Committee. I want to thank the officials from the department, all who have got a very, very busy schedule. I would also like to thank Advocate van der Merwe for her assistance as we go through this bill and for her assistance in the preparation of this bill. Chair, I'm in your hands as far as time is concerned. I hope not to be too long. This is not a controversial bill. It is a progressive bill, but you have laid a very positive groundwork that I will just build on. So if I may proceed with the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Chair, the presentation is, as I indicated, I'm not sure why this is not, I just need to see why it's not. So the objects of the bill, as you indicated, are to amend two pieces of legislation, the Animals Protection Bill and the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act, with the narrow ambit to prohibit the testing and the manufacturing and sale of cosmetics that were tested on an animal in the Republic, and to criminalize that in the Republic. And I think that is the very important beginning point. The process that we engaged in on this bill was that we started in already in 11 September 2020. This was gazetted in the Government Gazette as a private member's bill with an invitation for public comment. And I'm very pleased we've had a lot of public submissions, 2383 public submissions that were received at Parliament, including from many organizations. Of the 2383, 1311 were in support, but many felt we're not going far enough with the bill. Very few opposed, only 7 opposed with 1 real objection. And we also had a website, Dear South Africa, with more than 5,000 people indicating their views on the bill. A number said, again, not going far enough. Okay, as we know the rules, I won't delay that, but the rules do indicate this is because this is a private member's bill, all those public submissions at a certain stage need to be referred to the committee for consideration. That is in terms of the National Assembly rules, which I'm sure members are acquainted with. Okay, as you indicated, it is a measure of society, how it treats its most vulnerable, in this case, our animals. And we are also concerned about that South Africa only scores an E on the World Animal Protection Index. Now, this surely means that we need to improve the protection of animals in our country. And this is the reason why I'm continuing this work on this bill. My colleague Shivlin Dadi started the process, but sadly it was not able to be completed in the previous parliament and resulted, and so I'm continuing that work. Now, it's very important to note, the members should note that cosmetic testing on animals does not take place in South Africa. But what we are doing is we are sending a message like other countries have done, such as New Zealand, a preemptive law. We'll be following other countries that have passed similar laws. The chairperson indicated that as well, the EU, etc. I list all the nations there. All this information is contained in the memorandum to the bill. And it is important, Chair, you also indicated China. There is steps even in their regard to have cosmetic supervision and administrative regulations put in place. So we are aligning ourselves with countries across the world that are starting to take a very strong view on cosmetic testing on animals. It's also important to see what our courts have said in this regard, and again, this is referred to in the memorandum, that Cameron has also indicated that this does not confer rights on animals, but it's designed to protect the welfare and recognizes that animals are sentient beings. That means they have feelings, they have pain, they can experience pain and suffering. And Chair, you pointed that out at the beginning very well, the need to protect the most vulnerable in society. So, Chair, in the case of another SCA matter, where the Judge Navsa pointed out that the duty resting on us to protect and conserve our biodiversity is owed to present and future generations. In so doing, we will also be redressing past neglect. Constitutional values dictate a more caring attitude towards fellow humans, animals, and the environment in particular. And I think this is a very important point, and it was also highlighted in the Constitutional Court, which the Constitutional Court quoted these two cases with approval, and I do mention that as well in the memorandum. Chair, there's a very important aspect that we need to bear in mind, and there's a lot of reading and literature on this, and that is that a culture of caring and protecting our animals has significant benefits for the well-being of society, and that studies have shown that the efforts to reduce cruelty to animals are likely to reduce interpersonal violence in communities. And there's a very interesting article in that I quote from, and that is in Day Rabus, June 2014. And I would urge members to consider that piece of legislation, which highlights the levels. And this clearly, as we enhance our protection of animals in terms of this bill and in terms of other steps, it has a benefit to society. It has a benefit where we see our communities ravaged by high levels of gender-based violence. That article sets out the benefits in great detail, and I would really urge members to have a look at that, and we can engage in that further. But that is a very significant benefit that we have. We see criminals in society abusing animals, and where we reduce that abuse, there can be a very positive impact in that regard. Chair, so there is a need for the protection, to improve our protection, and I indicated that South Africa protect the recognition of sentience of animals by our judiciary to improve the protection of animals. It is possibly something that we need to consider, that in terms of an NGO, World Animal Protection, South Africa only scores an E, and where A is the best score that a country would be awarded. And I think we would all like to see our score in that regard being improved. Now, that NGO has done comparisons in many, many different countries, and I do point this out again in the memorandum, Chair, so that we can see there are recommendations to South Africa where we can improve the protection for animals, and this is includes protection for animals used in scientific research by enacting legislation which would protect animals used in scientific from unnecessary pain and suffering, and banning the testing of cosmetic products and the ingredients on animals. That is a specific issue that is raised by this NGO, and this bill would be assisting us to improve our score in that regard. Chairperson, although the next slide, the people of South Africa and our high courts recognize the plight of animals, sadly, there's a lot of practices that still exist globally. And I just highlight a few of these. Animal tests for cosmetics include rubbing substances into their shade backs, dripping substances into their eyes, painting substances into their ears. Other tests involve forced inhalation of substances, forced feedings at levels that cause illness or death. If these animals do not die during testing, they are subsequently killed and at great pain. And I think this is what is happening globally. You mentioned yourself some alarming statistics. Chair, I fully align myself with those comments. Now, what is also very interesting is that worldwide there is a move to replace animal testing in cosmetics, driven by regulatory changes around the world, research into technologies, and there are very positive technologies that do not require the testing of cosmetics on animals. And this is, and that includes commonly required safety tests, and a number of the NGOs that are assisting me with this bill, Beauty Without Cruelty, have given us the information. It's in the public submissions, and it is now, it's becoming common practice not to test ingredients on animals. And I think this is a very important point as well. Jay, so when we look then at the specifics, it's a very small bill. It's not a very long bill. All it does is it creates a new offense in terms of the Animal Protections Bill, a new relating to the testing of a cosmetic on an animal in South Africa. Now, remember, as I said at the beginning, this is a preemptive bill. There are no laboratories testing cosmetics on animals in South Africa, but it could happen. And I think we need, as other countries, to send out a very positive message that we will not allow that. Chair, and then the second part relates to the cosmetics disinfectants, which creates the offense of selling or manufacturing of a cosmetic. So the first is testing. The second part is the linked schedule, which is the selling or manufacturing. Now, Chair, that I don't want to spend a lot of detail. I'm sure there'll be questions, but I just highlight going back now to section 1, which has the definition of cosmetic in the bill. And that is a very comprehensive definition of what a cosmetic is. Section 2 inserts the certain clauses that would result in it being an offense to test the cosmetic on an animal. And then there is a deeming provision, very slight under 2. That is purely the insertion of an A there, and I'll explain that further during questions. And I know Advocate Van der Merwe can also help me with that regard. And then there is an exception there where obviously there is testing taking place for for medical reasons. And so there is a need for there to be an exception where that testing is for a purpose unrelated to the use of that ingredient in a cosmetic. So we need to bear in mind that aspect as well. So that is an exception that is stipulated in the bill as well on the legal advice from the parliamentary section. Then, Chair, we also, in terms of the schedule amends the Foodstuffs Act, and that is by, again, creating an offense of selling or manufacturing cosmetics, and again, with an exception. And then there is a special clause there to make sure that a defense referred to in the bill does not apply to where the offense relates purely to the sale and manufacture of cosmetics. Chair, just as far as the bill is concerned, the consultation that took place, animal rights organizations, animal welfare organizations, academia, lawyers dealing with animal rights, environment and health and safety, a number of papers and documents were considered in the development of this bill. And remember, this has come a number of years with my colleague, Sherilyn Dudley, also starting the process. So there's been a very, very wide consultation on the bill, and we're very grateful for the inputs that we've received from so many organizations, so many societies, so many individuals. Chair, there's no financial implications for the state. There already existing structures in place that inspect animals, the welfare of animals in terms of the Act. As you pointed out yourself, the NSPCA, President Mandela was the patron of that. They do incredibly good work, as do so many other welfare organizations, so many animal rights organizations that are on this platform. And I really appreciate the work that they do and the fact that they are on this platform. Many of them are on the platform today. Chair, just my concluding remark is that on the 23rd of this year, the Cape Animal Welfare Forum, representing 45 member organizations, expressed their strong support, as you indicated, this progressive bill. The Cape Animal Welfare calls upon all parties represented in Parliament to support the Animals Protection Amendment Bill. It's been proven beyond doubt that the toxicity testing of grooming products, that's cosmetic products, or ingredients therein on animals, serves no benefit to humans. This Animals Protection Amendment Bill should be uncontroversial, as there would be no negative impact on any individuals or companies. And that, I really appreciate that sentiment. Chair, I wish to conclude by thanking you, thanking the departmental members, thanking everyone on the platform for allowing me the opportunity to make this presentation. This bill is non-controversial. It is relatively straightforward, and it is in line, Chair, with your opening comments and the rich legacy that President Mandela left for us in caring for the most vulnerable in society, our animals, and that has a spin-off to assist societies to become more tolerant of one another as we protect the most vulnerable in society. Chair, I really thank you for this opportunity for this presentation. Thank you, and I now have expressed my thanks, and I'm in your hands now, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Swart, for the presentation. Let me, honorable members, having received the presentation from Honorable Swart, we will now invite Advocate Fundameva if she has any additions to the presentation made by Honorable Swart. Mama Fundameva? Honorable Swart, you can take off the slide.
Thank you, Chairperson. From Legal Services side, Chair, we don't have much to add to what was presented. We have considered the bill for constitutionality. There is nothing that we could find that speaks against the bill or that the bill would not pass constitutional muster. So constitutionality is not in question on this bill. There's also no implementation issues that we could find. There's also no clashes with other legislation on the statute book. So in the end, from a legal point of view, there's no objection to this bill. It is purely a matter of policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mama Fundameva. Honorable members, there is the input having been presented before the Portfolio Committee on Agricultural and Reform and Rural Development on the Animal Welfare Protection Act. Are there any questions of clarity or comments? We'll now open for discussion. Honorable Kabe.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm struggling a bit here with consistency on my network in the villages. But Chair, let me welcome this presentation of this bill. Very interesting. And I noted your opening remarks on how far the issue of animal protection is coming from. It is interesting, Chair, because we know that usually, like Honorable Swart indicates, for cosmetics, for pharmaceutical enterprises, animals are used as experiments. And I'm sitting here and thinking, well, not only for cosmetics, sometimes even for food safety or something like that. Now, this is very interesting, short and to the point as it is. I have noted the objects of the bill as indicated, Chair, but I just want to find out as to how will this proposed amendments impact on the animal welfare in South Africa? How big is our challenge? As and when we're looking at this, what will the impact be like? Two, what are the potential implications of this proposed amendments for cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries in South Africa? And how will the proposed amendments in the bill impact on the development and innovation of new cosmetics products in the country market? Were there any steps taken to mitigate any of the negative effects? We constantly going through innovation, and hence this question, or how will it impact? Has there been any mitigating steps for negativity on this in this regard? My other question, Chair, is that were there any concerns expressed by stakeholders from your cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries during consultation process towards development of this bill? If so, the concerns that were related to this bill, how were they addressed, if there were any concerns? My last question, Chair, on this bill is that I just want to find out also, for noting the high levels of poverty and employment inequality, how will this bill affect job creation on these industries that rely on animal testing for cosmetic products, if there are any? And is there a possibility that this bill could lead to closure of certain businesses? If so, what is the plan to address potential job losses? And in addition, have alternative methods for cosmetic testing been considered? And could the adaptation lead to job creation in related fields? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Klape. The Honorable Mamumba Bama.
Chair.
Dr. Masipa, you may proceed.
Yeah, Mamumba Bama is not in today. Chair, I am at the airport, but I'm just going to sponsor a very, very short question. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Honorable Swart, thank you very much for the presentation. Chair, I think the question really relates to the Animal Welfare Bill. My question to Honorable Swart is that I know that there is an Animal Welfare Bill in the system. I just wonder if he has considered that bill that is in the making with regards to animal welfare when he put together this particular amendment. Same to Mayor van der Merwe with regards to that, because I noted that she did say that it does not clash with any other bill or potential bill, if I may put it that way. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Tate Masipa. The Honorable Tate Matias. Tate Matias. The Honorable Bautapa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Let me join and thank Honorable Swartz for this presentation, which is to protect the animals. To protect the animals. I have a few questions here for clarity. One of them, I don't know whether I missed it in the presentation, where there was a mention of several countries involved and so on, but there was a, to me, constituents absence of the USA. I specifically asked this because if I may be allowed to say, I know of their arrogance, that sometimes they ignore the rest of the world in other things. So I would like to understand that part. You see, one thing which was interesting here, which was said by Honorable Swartz, when he was talking about this in relation to the cruelty that is relates to gender-based violence. It immediately reminded me of that situation where it was said that soldiers of Hitler, for them to be made really cruel, they were taught to hunt after animals. When they see a cockroach, they should be angry and kill it. When they see a rat, they should be angry and kill it. And those are the things which maybe were made really confirm that the cruelty on human beings can be made by these things. Thirdly, Chair, I would like to get some relation between the two extremes, how this is managed. Those who agree completely with the proposed bill and also feel that it does not go far enough, and those who are completely against this bill, and where does it take us? And lastly, I would like to get a comment in relation to the research institutions, whom I believe that they are likely to be the main candidates for understanding this bill, because they are the ones who implement activities on animals for the purpose of research. And in this case, it would go to where maybe do we think there will be alternatives, because really research activities have to be done, but at the same time, we want the animals to be protected. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kapa. Akbare Briet.
Môre voorsitter, hoe gaan dit?
Môre, ek is baie goed man, hoe gaan dit?
Dit gaan baie goed, dankie. It's just load shedding here in the park, so I hope you can all hear me. Chairperson, maybe let me start by thanking Honourable Swartz for this presentation. As a shall I say, makeup wearing constituent of this portfolio, this is a cause very dear to my heart. I have myself been using vegan products for years because I believe in the plight of animal welfare, Chairperson. And maybe you would allow me to be a bit naughty and say that I think what we as a committee needs to do is, I know there was there was talk of a welfare colloquium I think it was in 2021 in November, between us and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And I think this bill sets the correct tone that we might need to reconsider or consider having this welfare colloquium and have it sooner rather than later. But that may be just from my side. To get to my questions, Chairperson, I would like to find out on page 11 of Honourable Swartz's recommendations, he made mention that there was an NGO that made a comparison between legislation internationally and that which South Africa is lacking. And I would like to know whether that has been distributed to the department. I think that is specifically necessary, taking into account that the department is in the process of creating, as Honourable Masipa has mentioned, an animal welfare bill. So I would like to find that out. Then in terms of description of animals, I see we speak of the description of cosmetics, but I am aware that in the APA, the Principal Act currently, protection is not offered to rats, mice, rabbits, and guinea pigs. and they are the common species that are usually used in laboratories specifically for cosmetic research. So I would like to know whether that would be considered to actually include that to ensure that it is wider, and we are not leaving animals behind. And then just in terms of, I know you've also spoken about trade, and I know it doesn't specifically speak to animal protection as in live animals in South Africa, but I would like to know whether the bill would speak to, for example, products imported, products tested overseas on animals, and would that be taken into account? Because I think, as you've mentioned, certain amendments would need to take place in schedules, in further schedules, and I think that is a necessary thing. We can't be at the forefront of legislation like this and then have animal tested products imported. So I would just like to know about that. And then maybe Chairperson, to Advocate van der Merwe, in terms of, I know the department is busy, and maybe she can assist there. I know the department is busy with an amendment on the APA, on the Animal Protection Act, and I know they are busy with an Animal Welfare Act. I've also heard stories. I have become aware that there is a tender out specifically for the drafting of a new APA, and whether she's aware of this and what the reasoning would be, or maybe we should ask the department that. I'm just worried that we as a committee are doing double work, and that we are going out on process, even though I would support this bill 100%. I would like to find out in terms of that, or maybe the department can answer in terms of that, and as to why we are going out on tender for a new APA, the drafting process, if in previous meetings it has been said that the department actually has facilities and has the working group that can do that, Chairperson. And from my side, that would be.
Thank you, Akbar Brett. Ndabezitha Kosenkulu, the Honorable Cebekulu.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to you and to the members. Chairperson, although one does not have a dissenting view with regards to the bill that has been presented to us by the Honorable Member Swart, but one has just a simple question, which may be, let me say, follow on what Tsapa has just raised. Chairperson, mine is that for any medicines to be found suitable to heal, research is done for the diseases that crop up and attack animals, like the case is with human beings. Then my question is, what is the view of the sponsor of the bill with regards to finding more and more medicines to assist in extending life for whoever or forever reasons to animals as they do, as it is done to the human beings? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Cebekulu. Honorable Mahlo.
Good morning, Chairperson, my colleagues, our officials. Chair, in welcoming this presentation of the bill as presented, one will also appreciate your opening remarks, which has given us an open eye to the bill before we can even go into it. Chair, it sounds very good as presented. My question will be in this regard. I just wanted to understand how will the Animal Protection Amendment Bill impact on South Africa's international trade relations, as already mentioned a bit by Honorable Brett. with countries that still allow animal testing for the cosmetic, and what strategies are being developed to address any potential conflicts in that regard. The other question that one will also want to understand is that what impact will be what impact will the ban on the animal testing for cosmetics here on the exports of South Africa? As Honorable Briet has already mentioned, cosmetic products, and how will this affect the country's economic growth in South Africa? I thank you very much, Chair. Those are just a few things that I wanted to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member Shaw. Honorable Montwedi.
From my side, Chair, one must actually welcome the presentation as made by Honorable Swartz. It's a very proactive amendment which would actually assist on the cruelty that animals are actually going through, Chair. Now, already animals are going through some form of cruelty, Chair. You know, if you have to administer your hard water on livestock, it's quite something else. But you can just imagine now coming to test cosmetics on animal, on how the cruelty and everything else. So I must just say, I don't have any questions on my side. It's a very proactive amendment. Thank Honorable Swartz for having brought something, an amendment like that. There's nothing much, just to really appreciate that. And we welcome that presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Montwedi. Honorable Kruger.
Chairperson, thank you. No, I'm covered. And I think it's a sign of democracy working if members are bringing bills to committees, and I'm 100% forward. So, and I agree with Honorable Swart that this bill is a very important bill, and that we should make work of it so that it can go through before the 6th Parliament is ending. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kruger. Honorable members, are there any members on the platform that are not recognized who may wish to pose a question? Any members? If not, honorable members, let me sponsor maybe a question or two on my side, as you have been able to comprehensively deal with the issues that I may have wanted to pick on. And maybe if I can ascertain from our two presenters, Honorable Swart as well as Advocate van der Merwe, what measures are in place to ensure compliance with the amendment bill in cosmetics industry, and how will this be enforced, enforcement be carried out, and what penalties will be imposed for non-compliance? And maybe the second one dwells on what Honorable Kape touched on, which is, are there any concerns about potential gaps or contradictions between the proposed amendments and existing legislation or regulation? That will be all on my side, honorable members. Let us hand back to Honorable Swart for responses.
Chairperson and colleagues, honorable members, may I firstly thank you for your questions and thank you for the positive sentiments that you have expressed. I really appreciate it. And I realize that this is the beginning of a process for many honorable members. And I would like the Honorable Van der Merwe to come in to just explain after I have answered the questions. Please forgive me if I miss any questions. I've tried to note them down, but please remind me should I miss any questions. Honorable Slophe, you indicated some questions, and thank you for your opening comments to welcome the presentation. And you asked that how will the proposed amendment impact animal welfare in South Africa? We believe that it will improve our index internationally. It will go a long way to improve both animal welfare and, of course, societies in this regard. It's very important to note that we have built in an exemption into it. So this only relates to cosmetic testing on animals, which is a proactive act. As far as we can understand from all our research, from all the submissions, there is no laboratory in South Africa that tests cosmetics on animals. This is proactive to prevent it happening in the future. There are laboratories that test on animals in South Africa for pharmaceutical, for other purposes. That is not covered by this bill because we do understand there is a need for that purpose. This is a very narrow bill. And I think when the Honourable Member asked the alternative methods, now this is very interesting, and I think the Honourable Breert pointed out what she referred to as vegan testing. I think that is such a wonderful concept, that there is very widespread alternative methods that more and more people, more and more women are using cosmetics that are not tested on animals. And I think that is becoming the trend. If you walk into shopping malls, you will see Beauty Without Cruelty. We do not test cosmetics on animals. And this is on imported cosmetics, imported where it happens internationally in overseas laboratories, and those cosmetics are imported to South Africa. Now, it's very important to mention as well that, and this is one of the other issues, is that we are not seeking at this stage to ban the importation of cosmetics that has been tested on animals, because that could have a very wide-ranging impact on businesses. And whilst it could be very desirable, and I know many organizations on the platform would want that to be done, such as Beauty Without Cruelty, but at this stage, we want it very narrow because that has international obligations, international trade obligations, and can have an impact on businesses in South Africa. So it's a very narrow bill. So, Chair, how will the bill affect job creation? Because cosmetics is not doing in South Africa at the moment, it is very narrow. So we do not see that it will affect job creation at the moment in South Africa. In fact, one of the documents that we can refer to as it's part of the public submissions, which is from Cruelty Free International, has indicated that where the European Union final prohibition on the sale of new animal tested cosmetics came into effect in 2013, that's 10 years ago. Since ending testing, the EU has experienced a flourishing trade in cosmetics growth in the number of small and medium-sized cosmetic businesses and a dramatic increase in alternative testing industry. There is scope for growth in South Africa with alternative testing industry. And in fact, non-animal testing methods spare significant numbers of animals from pain, distress, and death. And I think this is a very important point that has been made in this regard, that what certain countries are in fact finding, on the contrary, not loss of jobs, but they're finding here, as indicated in the European medium, small and medium-sized businesses are in fact growing. And that's a particular positive aspect that one could look at. So the bill affect closures. if I miss any questions, so in job creation in related fields, we would hope to see that alternative methods are adopted in South Africa, but what we are seeing worldwide is in fact job creation taking place. The Honorable Tata Mosepia, I'm so sorry, the Animal Welfare Bill is in the system. I would like Honorable Van der Merwe to also comment on that. This is a very narrow bill. I appreciate that this could be dealt with in a broader bill, but I think the concern is that that animal welfare bill will take some time. This bill is so narrow and so uncontroversial that it could be passed very quickly and it could be finalized before the end of this parliament. And that would be my plea, because it would send such a strong message to all the organizations that are represented here. And there is a possibility that we could finalize it, given the fact that we weren't able to, my colleague Sherilyn Dudley was not able to finalize it in the previous bill. So if we were to join it with the animal welfare bill, that could take some time, and maybe that's not the way forward. I would really urge members, this could be our bill. I don't want to see it as a private member's bill. I wanted to see as all of us taking hands together and I will not take any personal credit for this. I would want us as Parliament to send a strong message out that we're taking hands with all the societies that are requiring this. The comment was made by Honorable Kapa about the absence of the USA. If you look at the memorandum, there are certain states that whilst there isn't a specific federal law, I do refer to some of the states that in my paragraph about the different countries, where I say Australia's banned the use of newly derived animal test data for ingredients in cosmetics, and Canada, Brazil, the USA, Mexico, Colombia are in the process of passing laws in this regard. We can give an update because obviously this memorandum was done at a certain stage. So there is significant progress being made in a number of countries. In particular, certain states in America, California, Nevada, Illinois have restricted the sale of animal tested cosmetics. So I appreciate that. I don't think there is a federal law in the USA, but there is some progress. But I do think, as the chair indicated at the beginning, those millions, China, USA, even China, the new cosmetics supervision regulation that is being put in place there. And I think we, South Africa, could take a lead on the continent and see what other African countries are doing in that regard as well. Thank you for the comments about cruelty and gender-based violence. And I think the comment that our honourable member made about soldiers of Hitler hunting after animals is a very good example, and of where there's a definite link between animal cruelty and human abuse, where it's almost a searing of your conscience, so that when your conscience is seared and you can harm an innocent animal, that then you would far more easily harm a fellow human being. And that is what that article, that reviews that I referred to in De Rebus, that reviews studies that have been done, which have come to the conclusion that there's a very strong connection between animals mistreatment and human violence. So there's an additional spin-off here that we can really reduce, hopefully, the violence in our communities by sending this strong message out that we want to raise our protection for animals. The issue about the submissions, the overwhelming support was for the bill. Many saying it does not go far enough. Yes, we appreciate that, but it's a start. Those that are completely against, some would say we need to rather protect humans, we need to deal with abortion issues. Those are important aspects, but we're dealing here with a narrow bill, and the members would see when all the public submissions are circulated that there are very few that actually are completely against. It's a very small grouping. And again, It is those that maybe don't believe in animal rights, that animals should be protected, or believe that there are more pertinent other issues. I think we as Parliament are dealing with other issues as well. That should not detract us from dealing with and trying to protect animals, the most vulnerable. Research institutions. So there are no laboratories in South Africa that test cosmetic testing on animals. And that is a very important, that's the first point. There are laboratories that test on animals for medicinal purposes, for pharmaceutical purposes. That is a separate issue. And that's why Advocate Van Merwe will make it very clear there is the exemption. Ingredients for cosmetics that are used for other purposes are not covered by this ban. It is a very narrow ban. We understand, and sadly, that there is animal testing for medicinal purposes, and possibly also for the other member that mentioned animal testing to save the lives of other animals. But this is very narrow, and it relates to cosmetic testing. Honorable Brett, thank you for your comments. Thank you for using vegan products. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate your comments about a welfare colloquium. I think that is very important. The issue about research, if I understood it, about the distribution of animal products, I appreciate that. Now, the description of the definition of animals, I think one can definitely look at that and to see to what degree it is comprehensively covered. I'm just quickly looking at that act, and it could be that the point you make is valid, and I think that is an important aspect that you raise, which we appreciate. Rats, mice, guinea pigs, something to consider should the need arise. Maybe Advocate Van Merwe can indicate whether the definition is sufficient. The issue about trade with imported products, I understand your support for banning imported products, but at this stage, that's not what we're seeking, because that would then broaden the bill and have international trade implications. At this stage, we are not seeking that ban. It is the testing in South Africa, the manufacture in South Africa, the sale in South Africa of cosmetics tested in South Africa. So it is very narrow, it's preemptive. I think other members might be concerned if we want to broaden that ban, and I think other committees, international trade relations, would be impacted by that. But I want to just reassure Honourable Brett that there is a worldwide move to ban cosmetic testing on animals, and there are maybe, we can get information on that, but less and less cosmetics that are being imported. Hopefully, we can really discourage that practice going forward. Chair, thank you for the Honourable Nkosi Kebeka Kulu. Thank you for the comments about medicines found to be usable. The view finding more for animals to extend the lives of animals. That is not covered by this bill. We are not banning where there is animal testing to extend the lives of animals and humans. That is not covered by this ban. In fact, there's the exemption, which we say any ingredient that is used in cosmetic testing that is used for another purpose, such as pharmaceuticals, there is an exemption from the ban in terms of that. The Honourable Mashlau, thank you very much. Mashlau, I hope I pronounced that correct. Please forgive me. The international, you raise the importance of international trade relations, and as are presently worded, it has no impact on international imports, whilst some members expressed the view that it would be desirable, but I think we might be going beyond the ambit, and I think we'd have to, that would have an impact on international trade relations. It only relates to cosmetic testing of animals in South Africa, which we understand there are no laboratories doing it in South Africa. Banning on exports, again, it doesn't take place in South Africa. We are not even, should the situation arise of animal cosmetic testing of a product overseas that is imported into South Africa and then again exported from South Africa, that same product, that would not be impacted by this bill. It is a very, very narrow bill. And we would hope that this bill would in fact encourage alternative testing methods in South Africa, which could result in economic growth in South Africa. We do not see it having any impact on economic growth in South Africa. Honourable Motwebi, thank you for your kind words in welcoming the presentation. And I appreciate it. And I know members that are from animal organizations, animal rights, animal protection would also appreciate all the comments of the members. I got a message to say one person has got sitting with tears in her eyes, a person that has really assisted me, the Honourable member from Beauty Without Cruelty, Brockhoffen, who's really assisted me with this bill. She is in tears, and I just want to thank you, members, for that. So we do appreciate that animals do go through some cruelty. You speak about hard water, the tests on animals, and this, but this is how we can stop this. How we can stop this very narrow cruelty on cosmetics. This is, thank you for saying it is proactive. Honourable Kruger, I really appreciate your support, and I really appreciate your emphasis that we could pass this bill. I'm speaking as all of us. This is not my bill. That we could pass this bill this year. We could make work of it. We don't have to advertise again. The submissions are there. We could deal with this bill very quickly because, as I indicated, we've already had extensive consultations. There's been public submissions have been made, and I think this should the members support us. It could be moved very quickly. Chair, your very valid comments about measures in place to ensure compliance. Again, in terms of the Animal Protection Act, there are many organizations in place to monitor animal protection, animal cruelty, such as the SPCA, many other organizations. The penalties are in the bill. It's 1 year, 4,000 Rand for penalties. But again, I want to emphasize that as far as we are aware of, and in fact, there's no evidence of any laboratory in South Africa that is testing cosmetics in animals. This is proactive. Should any person want to set up such a laboratory, it would be a criminal offense. And we would rather that international people, international investors, which is the trend internationally, would set up an alternative laboratory for establishing vegan cosmetics, such as the Honourable Breert has indicated. There is potential for economic growth. So we don't, but should the case arise that we find there is some cosmetic laboratory that is operating illegally, there are penalties in place, and both the SAPs have to, the animal welfare organizations would be alerted to this. They are they're watching this very, very closely, and we will also, we will ensure that the necessary steps are taken. There is a 1 year imprisonment, 4,000 Rand. One could even look at that as well. Lastly, Chair, you asked, are there gaps with proposed and existing legislation? I'm not aware of any gaps. This is a very narrow bill, and I'm sure the Honourable Advocate van der Merwe would also comment. But I'd lastly just want to thank all the members again for their pertinent questions. I hope I've been able to answer them all. If there aren't any that I've answered, please alert me and I'll try my best to answer that. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable van der Merwe. Honourable Swart will now invite Mamo van der Merwe for her responses.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think maybe it would assist members if I just explain a bit of the history of this bill. It started with Mrs. Dudley, and the bill at that point in time, in fact, initially when we received the instruction to assist the member to develop the bill, it was quite a broad bill. It dealt with strengthening of the powers of the NSPCA, of inspectors. It also dealt at one point, in fact, with circus animals. So it was quite a broad bill, and for comments and considered all of those comments. And the bill was then adjusted before it was introduced. For instance, some of the more contentious issues were taken out, such as this, Mrs. Dudley, focused purely on cosmetic testing and strengthening the roles of courts and of the SPCA's inspectors. When the bill then lapsed at the end of the 5th Parliament, then Mr. Swart perceived the issues that were made contentious, and the bill was in fact streamlined a lot more. We are aware of the review by the Department of the welfare legislation. The big problem that the members both missed was, and goes back as far as 2007. No, I lie, 1997. The department, and since then it has been movement in respect of members to instruct legal services to do further work. So that is where this also offers the Legal Service Office of Parliament. We assist members with developing these bills, but we do not inform the policy. So we may have views on the bill, but we do not expect legislative formation of legislation and perhaps some research. And the reason for giving all this background is that I want you to see what I can do to assist members. So some of these questions I can answer because of research that I've done, but it does not express my view or anything. It's simply based on what I have found. Some of the questions even venture into the submissions that have been received, and submissions or rather statements made by submitters in respect of this legislation. So I can perhaps just indicate when I quickly then go through the questions, how will this bill impact on animal welfare in South Africa? As Mr. Swart indicated, the bill does not remedy a current mischief. It fills a gap done, but in order and following the example of other countries, to prevent that becoming a mischief, that is where this bill is then intending to fill that gap. So what we already have in the European Union is that the ban on cosmetic testing is already in place, and they targeted actually in 2013 to extend that to the testing of all products on animals. But there was a lot of concern raised by member countries because there weren't sufficient alternative methods. So since then, and they are targeting now implementation of that ban of all testing, so even medicine, even detergents, now in this year, in 2023. Whether that will happen, of course, will. So what the European Union is looking at is to change testing on animals to alternative methods such as computer models, cells and tissue cultures, alternative organisms rather than animals. So these are things, microorganisms is also something else. And the argument that comes from the European Union is that first off, it's quite costly to test on animals. You have to maintain the animals, you have to purchase the animals. To some extent, you may have to treat the animal. Furthermore, there's also you have to, sorry, there's a requirement. I'm trying to remember what I've read in all these articles. There's also a requirement of testing will be on a large number of animals. It's not sufficient to do it on one or two because you need to see how they react. And then lastly, there's also the concern that the way an animal reacts does not necessarily mean that a human will react the same way. So there might be a disjuncture in the test itself. I think I remember that something like arsenic, some animal is quite happy to eat arsenic and doesn't happen anything to them. But of course, if humans ingest that, we would die. So that is where the European Union comes from. Then that, and the reason for mentioning that is just to come to the question of export. So if South Africa has something in place which indicates that this is the step that South Africa is taking, in fact, I think that could be something that speaks towards exports for South Africa. I've recently read an article about milk products not being able to be imported into the Netherlands. So a number of South Africa's products are now being stopped because we need to insert something in our milk product before it can go out. So that kind of thing can assist South Africa in respect of trade when it comes to exporting. So the questions on the potential implications on the industry in South Africa, whether there's negative impact, like I say, it fills a gap. So there won't be any impact to that extent. Then about the bill that is in the making, like I said, it is still coming. The problem that the members sat with, rather, when they came to legal services to assist, is that there isn't something that is drafted that we can compare. So we don't know. The department might well be working on something, and that is us come and present and talk to the committee about this bill, because they are the people who will know whether this will be a duplication or not. At this point in time, whether whatever is being developed is still an internal document, and until something is approved by or even to Parliament, so unless the department, of course, comes and briefs and tells the department, tells the committee what is in that bill. So it was a bit of a catch-22 that the members found themselves in. I did do some research to see if I could find anything, and all I could find was that there is something in the process, but not that there was something specific. I am aware that Mrs. Dudley in 2016 to comment on the bill, and unfortunately no comments were received from them. I think Mrs. Dudley on her bill received something from the Gauteng provincial government, but nothing else. Then the other questions that I just maybe want to speak to, I've spoken about the alternative testing proposals that come from the European Union, that there is that, but in respect of cosmetics, the European Union, of course, has that back to other tests is perhaps where the concern is still in the European Union. This bill does not affect any tests except something that is described in the bill as a cosmetic. And there is also that then the exemption that the member referred to. So if a laboratory is going to test an ingredient that is found in a cosmetic, so you're testing a soap type thing that's found in a shampoo or in a shaving cream, for instance, but you're actually going to use this in cleaning, then you can still test. The bill will then not affect that testing. One of the persons that I consulted with when developing the bill for Mrs. Dudley was a professor from the University of Pretoria, who made it very clear that at this point in time, South Africa is not ready for the bill to be extended to other products, to poisons, things like that. Cosmetics, the advice that I received from him was that there is nothing in South Africa at the moment. No laboratories are testing cosmetic ingredients or cosmetics themselves, but his advice was in respect of poisons, and those you can't bring something like that in. And that is also the challenge that European Union is facing in respect of bringing in this ban on all products. But like I said, the bill is narrow. It's only in respect of cosmetic testing. The NGO comparison in respect of the international legislation, I'm sure the department would have that, but I do have that available if the committee would want to send that to the department. I've spoken about the amendment already. The bill does not affect products that are tested overseas. one of the submissions that the member received, I think from the NSPCA, indicated that it should include those as well. But this is not something that the committee at this stage can, in fact, consider. At this point in time, the committee is considering whether this bill is desirable or not. So it is it's a policy question. Is this bill desirable or not? Once the committee has made a decision, of course, if the committee says, no, it's not desirable, that is the end of the bill. There will be a report and it will go to the House. But if the committee decides that the bill is desirable, then the committee can consider these things, like should it be things that have been tested overseas, and do we also want to prohibit that import? But that is a question for a next step. Similarly, the question about whether the definition of animals is broad enough. A number of submissions made that comment. However, when we assisted Mrs. Dudley on the bill, there was a massive expansion of the definition of animals, and that turned out to be quite contentious. There were a number of submissions that were pro the extension of the definition, and there were a number that were against it. So I think that is maybe something that the committee can consider, but like I said, it's a next step. The committee first needs to cross the first hurdle, whether the bill as it is in its narrow form, where it just bases itself on banning cosmetic testing, speaks to the penalty, speaks to the other act that is affected, the Foodstuffs Act. That is it. If that is desirable, that's the first question that the committee will have to consider. I think the same answer goes in respect of testing of medicine on animals. That is not affected by this bill. The enforcement, Chair, on your specific question on enforcement, there was an amendment to the APA in 1997 dealing with dog fighting. And we have seen quite a number of court cases where the NSPCA has actually acted with that section in the Act as support. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is enforcement, there are methods for enforcement. The Act does provide for enforcement. And in fact, we have seen that happening. Chair, I think those are the questions that I could answer. I try to not steer into the field of the policy question that you have to do, but I try to share where I do have some research knowledge or background knowledge to share that with the committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mamu van der Merwe. Honorable members, those are the responses from Honorable Swartz as well as Mamu van der Merwe. Are there any follow-up questions on the presentation? Honorable Kapa, any other hand?
Oh.
Any other hand, honorable members? If not, Honorable Kapa, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I have noticed that there is a mention that in South Africa, there are no laboratories that are involved in the cosmetics testing, which seem to be then the major part of the bill. And there was also a mention that the other bill might take long. But besides that, I would like to get a clarity on why this bill becomes absolutely necessary and not have a possibility to be part of amendment to the animal welfare, that it should be a standalone as animal protection, whether it is only because of this cosmetics testing and the fact that maybe there's a feeling that this other bill is going to take long. I've got to get a clarity that besides those, are there any other reasons why we would feel that this bill is absolutely necessary? Thank you, Chair.
Any other follow-up questions, honorable members? If not, Honorable Swartz.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for Honorable Carper for the question. I think the very important issue is, as I highlighted, and if you look carefully at the memorandum, this is a preemptive bill. We might have a laboratory that applies tomorrow to be set up in South Africa, and there'd be nothing in place to prevent that. We are also, in terms of the Animal Protection Index internationally, we need to show some steps that we are improving our rating, where we are on an E, where we could be an A. Now, I fully appreciate the comment that you make. It's a very valid point. Should we rather wait for the Animal Welfare Act in the long term? But I am concerned that that has already been almost 10 years and there's nothing before Cabinet. And if we don't express some small improvement, we could remain on that negative Animal Protection Index. As Advocate van der Merwe indicated, even with the EU, our trade partners internationally are moving in this direction, and they could start penalizing us, such as they're doing with our imports of milk, where there are issues there. And I think this sends a message. It's a very straightforward bill, but I do appreciate the comment in that regard. But I do think that we would send a strong message, and we could set a standard as well for the continent, but coming in line with international tendencies and the alignments to move away from animal testing for cosmetics, and importantly, very importantly for us then to understand that it could have trade and other benefits. So the question is, should we wait until some time when the department brings an animal welfare bill? That could be another 5 years, it could be another 10 years. But surely we can act proactively like other countries have done in setting up a proactive law to deal with this mischief, to protect our vulnerable members, to protect our vulnerable animals, with the spin-off that we would send a message that we want to protect our animals, and in so doing, we are also going to protect our communities. Thank you, Chair, for that very valid comment from the Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Swart, for the response. Honourable members, let me also highlight that as per the rules of the National Assembly, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development will be afforded an opportunity to come before the committee on Friday, the 24th, to give their responses on the Act. So we will be having the engagement with the department. They have been invited to be part of this meeting so that they can listen to the presentation and the legalities in and around that. And I do see Ntate Serache, who's in attendance from the department, as well as Ralph. So they will be taking notes of the issues raised by the honourable members. And I do believe that on their presentation on Friday, they will cover this. But also, most importantly, on Friday, we have requested the department and the Honourable Minister to take us through the engagements that they have had with the farmers regarding the impact of load shedding. So we will be having those two items dealt with this coming Friday. That is all, honourable members, in terms of the agenda of today, which was before the committee. And we would like to thank both Honourable Swart as well as Advocate Mamo van der Merwe for their presentation and responses on the Animal Welfare Protection Act. And we believe that we will be able to navigate with speed and try at our level best to see this bill through Parliament. We take note that it is one of those favorable bills that can be seen through Parliament within this tenure of the 6th Parliament, and we'll do our level best to ensure that we dot the I's and cross the T's in ensuring that this work is prioritized and done. So let me thank you all, honorable members, for availing yourselves for this portfolio committee meeting, and also thank our presenters, thank the interested parties who took time into listening to the presentations and the proceedings of the committee. Want to thank the officials of the department that have been with us through this morning's proceedings. Honorable members, let me remind you that we do have a 3-line whip where we will be having plenary at 2 o'clock in the Good Hope Chamber for those that will be attending physically. It is a hybrid meeting, and those that will be logging in, please do log in timeously, preferably around 1 o'clock, so that we do not have any disturbances due to networks, as most of us are experiencing load shedding throughout the country. We also had to start this meeting in darkness as a result of load shedding in Acacia Park, but we are happy that we've been able to navigate through that and see this meetings through. We want to thank our staff and the supporting staff of Parliament, who continuously is able to assist us with attending to the technological glitches that we continuously experience. And thank you for assisting us with these Zoom meetings. And we want to wish everyone a great week ahead and enjoy the rest of the deliberations. Honorable members, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. Goodbye, colleagues. See you this
Thank you.
afternoon.
Thank you,
Bye.
Chair. Bye.
Thank you, Jay, and see you this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
See you this afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.